Welcome to Shardcast, the Brandon Sanderson podcast. We're a bunch of mega fans giving you the news, discussion, and of course, a whole lot of opinions about Brandon's works and the Cosmere. I'm Eric, and joining me is Ian.
Hey, I'm Weiry.
Also, well done. How do intros work? Also joining me is Evgeni.
And I am the least prepared person on this podcast today.
No, you're going to have a fresh perspective. See?
And
totally
I am
different.
going to have to be the freshest perspective on preparedness of this podcast.
The Fresh Prince of Chicago.
When I think of fresh, I think of Argent. And I'm Chaos. This week, we are going to talk about Words of Brandon from the Legion release, which there were a lot of good ones. This was a spicy time, okay?
Yes.
And that's not even counting the Words of Brandon that talk about spices.
Yeah, right. There was one about food that we're not going to discuss. And
so I think it was a good one.
Yeah, well,
it was interesting.
You can
we had
always
to be picky.
Read Words of Brandon at Arcanum, wob.coppermine.net. And you can read all of them, and there was over 100, and this is already going to be 2 episodes, and we've been doing a lot of Words of Brandon episodes, so we don't want to overload the channel with too many of these, but we do want to educate people on the exciting stuff and analyze things, because there's some exciting stuff. But first, we have some news.
Yes, we do. Badali Jewelers, which does a lot of science fiction and fantasy themed jewelry and has done licensed Brandon stuff before.
Lots of stuff.
Yeah, a lot of stuff. Is launched a new product, which is custom rings that you can have messages in the steel alphabet inscribed on.
Apparently, you can get up to 19 characters on them, and they can also be very expensive, depending on what metal you would like to have on it.
Yes, it ranges from not cheap to very expensive, but they are very cool looking.
Comment below if you propose to your significant other using a very expensive battle eye ring.
I've read on Reddit that a few people showed their girlfriends and fiancés the thing and you are not using that for your wedding ring.
There's a friend of mine whose wedding band and his now wife's wedding band was and still is a replica of the One Ring.
I love that.
See, that's more cool than these. Let's be perfectly real here. That is definitely more cool.
Yeah.
The best part is that this episode is going to be posted late October, where there's, I'm sure, going to be lots more news that we have no idea because we're in the past in September right now.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and these rings have been available for a month. So,
have they?
Well, no,
they will.
They've been available for a few days,
right
as
now.
of this recording.
Right?
But
yeah.
When this airs,
cool. Well, let's get started. And there were a lot of things about Nightblood in the Legion release.
I wonder why. It's almost like Nightblood is an incredibly interesting and weird thing in the Cosmere.
Well, yeah, but we got some actual Words of Brandon about Nightblood that are interesting. So we thought we'd start with Nightblood, and then we'll just go kind of, you through the usual lines. All right, so Evgeni, why don't you read this first one?
Why don't I do that? Mason Wheeler asks...
Hey, Mason.
Hey, Mason. Asks about Nightblood and whether the shards or the vessels are terrified of him, much like pretty much any other being in the Cosmere, and rightfully so.
Every rational being.
Yeah, that's what Brandon
important.
said
Sure,
previously.
Sure, which raises the question, is Hoid afraid of Nightblood? But that's not this question.
No.
To which Brandon says that the vessels are concerned, not terrified, maybe scared, and this leads into a quick discussion on whether whether Nightblood was as ridiculously invested at the time of its creation as it is now, and Brandon finally confirms that no, it was not. It grew in power over time.
Yep.
Which is terrifying.
Interesting. Yeah, yes, it is terrifying.
Finally, we get a confirmation that why is he so ridiculously invested? Because he is sucking in investiture. Easy. The explanation is easy. in some sense.
At least partial. So maybe it's not eating all investiture. It like if you stab someone, it doesn't like eat all investiture like a Larkin would or something. But maybe it's a residual. Yeah, some of it goes away, some of it is absorbed.
Yes. But there's still probably that extra oomph, initially that made Nightblood function this way that Azure's Blade, let's say, did not, right?
Mm-hmm.
Man, I think that's pretty crazy that Brandon actually finally said that. But
right,
yeah. This next one, Mason asks, what would happen if someone carried Nightblood unsheathed into a perpendicularity? And Brandon said, Rapho.
A Rapho would happen.
Which, given this absorbing of investiture, that's probably for the best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would probably stop being a perpendicularity very quickly. Because it requires a conflux of large amount of investiture in one place makes a perpendicularity.
Right.
So if all of the investiture gets consumed, it's not a perpendicularity anymore.
Well, but that would depend on how much of that Nightblood can actually eat, right? So I can see different scenarios here. Maybe if let's say you dip into the Aeona perpendicularity, right? Because it's a pool.
Yeah.
Maybe you move so fast between the realms that Nightblood does only some damage to the perpendicularity, and you get the equivalent of a turbulence as you go through. Maybe it annihilates the whole thing. Maybe there is so much investiture in a perpendicularity that even Nightblood cannot make any kind of significant dent in it over the course of a few seconds.
Yeah, perpendicularities. Let's just remember, Rashek changed the entire world of Scadrial and moved the planet, and that was just a fraction of a shard's power.
Yeah.
And so, how much investiture could Nightblood really eat?
Yeah.
A lot, but it would be a lot.
I think whether the shard is aware, a splintered shard is going to be more traumatic because nothing can stop Nightblood. But if you stuck Nightblood into Cultivation's perpendicularity, she could probably be no, that's bad. I'm going to withdraw all the investiture from there to make that stop.
Well, I just wonder how much control a shard has in their perpendicularity. I mean, clearly some, but...
Yeah.
They could... I would say that they could shift where the perpendicularity was.
Yeah,
it's
I think
yes,
we
it's
know
a
that,
natural occurrence, but they can just shove it somewhere else.
That's kind of like what Preservation did with the well, kind of. I feel like in the imprisonment of Ruin in some respects, but I don't know, it's kind of weird.
I don't know if they can do that in a moment, though.
I feel like shards would keep track of this highly invested thing, but maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
It is made of metal. I don't know if they can see them.
Well, yeah, that's true.
It's not invisible to them. It shines very brightly, so they would be able to see where it is.
Maybe it does.
For non-Scadrian shards, we don't know, right?
That's true.
I wonder.
But it's still a large amount of investiture, so I would assume that shines or would be noticeable.
Yeah.
Probably.
Well, yeah, because unsheathed, yeah. Because kinetic investiture gives off pulses, right? So whenever Nightblood is unsheathed, it would do some sort of pulsing similarly, right? And shards would be much better at determining this than any Allomancer ever could, right?
But a person's soul shines, and that's not kinetic investiture.
Right,
yeah.
So with metals and people's souls, it is because there's a quote-unquote window to the spiritual realm, and what they see is the shine of power from there. But I don't know whether Nightblood's colossal amount of investiture would interfere with that. Maybe all of the investiture that he has absorbed over the years is not stored in the spiritual. Maybe it is stored in the cognitive, where his Frankenstein's monsters cognitive aspect resides.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if the shards can see him there. Or even if they can, the shards have limited ability to, they have a mind, they have a vessel. They can't be everywhere at all times.
Yeah.
No.
And so especially the ones on, like, Cultivation probably checks up on him every now and then, but
Yeah.
I don't think she looks at him at all times.
Yeah. I mean, that's true. Great. Well, that was the Raffo.
We spent 10 seconds on a page, Wob, and 5 minutes on 2 lines. But this one reminded me of the first one. I wanted to mention something real quick.
Oh, yeah?
I wonder if the vessels are concerned about Nightblood in the same way that people right now are concerned about AI. And so, like, a lot of people, or at least I'd say a lot of people, are concerned that Evo AI, Skynet, Terminator scenario, end of the world type deal. But that's a very future-centric concern. And so I wonder if the vessels are thinking, well, this could become a problem in the distant future, so let's just keep an eye out for that. But maybe it's not going to happen. Why bother dealing with it?
That's an interesting idea.
The thing that I was thinking of is, what if Nightblood grabs enough investiture that he is a shard? And we actually have a word of Brandon about sentient on objects becoming shards later.
Which is crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
finally, we have a Wob on that.
Yeah. But I like this next word of Brandon, Ian, because it basically just asks the question that's been always on our mind.
Yeah. Okay. So Orange Jedi asked, when Nightblood was created, was endowment involved in any way more than normal? Brandon's like, good question. You qualified that the right way. I would say yes, but maybe not to the extent you're thinking. Orange Jedi then clarified, normal being using endowment's investiture to awaken. There's something special. Brandon, I would say there is something special. Bum, bum,
Hooray!
Bum. So not to the extent you're thinking, but something special makes me think like maybe the extra oomph is not endowment stuff, but because I'm
maybe
sure
she
Brandon,
maybe she was involved in delivering the extra oomph. So she had a bunch of autonomous investiture in a cup. And
well, I don't think it would be autonomy.
Whatever.
Yeah. From somewhere else.
Right.
Yes.
So one possible scenario was endowment was involved in that she assisted or interfered with Shashara's awakening, but not by delivering additional breath, essentially.
Yeah. Sure.
Which does lead into the next 2 words of Brendan, really.
And this segues conveniently into a question by Wallin, or Waylin. If I'm saying this wrong, let me know. Ping me in Discord. You're the only person who can ping me in Discord about this.
Those are dangerous words to say.
Does Nightblood contain any atium? And Brandon hard knows this one.
Brandon, I rarely say no, Sanders.
Well, that's a rare occasion, obviously.
But then Waylon asks, does Nightblood contain any of Ruin's investiture? Like, not atium, but Brandon, yes, technically. And I'm not wiggling around that, because technically location in the Cosmere and who belongs to what gets really weird, right? Because Ruin's investiture is everywhere. But I'm not talking that way. I'm talking the way you actually mean it. What? What?
Which, in retrospect, why has this question not been asked before? Because Brennan has alluded, like, oh, corrupted investiture, Nightblood, mixing of investiture. And then destruction is ruinous. Like,
yeah,
like, absolutely. I would like, as the most boring person in the entire fandom, I would like to propose a more pedestrian solution.
Yes.
To this conundrum.
Yeah. Yes.
Nightblood has just destroyed something that was of ruin.
I think so. I think that's what that means, because Brandon said yes, technically, right? Like, does Nightblood contain some of Honor's investiture and Odium's investiture? Yes, because he's been destroying things that were invested in those things, right? I think that's the simplest explanation.
It is.
Perhaps. Because the way So a thought that just occurred to me is that Brandon has talked about if you were to make a sentient robot,
Yes.
it would form a soul by like drawing on the investiture in the spiritual realm. It would make a spirit web.
Okay.
So what if when they awakened Nightblood, it made a soul for the sword and it drew in some ruinous investiture because it's so heavily associated with Ruin's intent, like destroying.
I just feel like with the way Brandon said, it's yes technically. Let me explain why this is kind of weird because technically, Ruin's investitures everywhere. But I'm actually talking about it the way you mean it. But it's still yes technically.
But I feel like the whole like, oh, it just ate something that had Ruin's investiture isn't significant enough.
Well,
it doesn't have to be. Like, what Brandon could be saying here is, I understand why you're asking me this. And so, yes, technically is still the answer I stand by.
Which, like, he couldn't say no because it's like, did Nightblood do that? Yeah.
I mean, technically, yes.
Right. So I think that's the more sensible explanation than Ruin providing the extra oomph or something. I mean, well, maybe sure, that's possible. There's something that we don't know with Nightblood. Yes,
yeah, like it's not like anything conscious on Ruin's part. It's just drawing from latent investiture in the Cosmere.
I just don't know how much people can do that. Like, that's the thing, right?
I think this is a very, very weird thing. So very, very weird things could have happened.
Someone should ask, does Nightblood contain any of insert shard here investiture and see what Brandon says? Because if he answers yes technically on those, then it's probably not the drawing off Ruin, right?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, if you kill someone who, on Scadrial with Nightblood, you would have some Ruin investiture, right? It's not an exciting answer, but Brandon's all shards have technically invested themselves on Roshar Sanderson.
Right.
So, yeah.
That's a lot of middle names.
Yes. That's his long form title, That we'll just list all those. Brandon, I never say no, Sanderson, and all shards have invested themselves on Roshar Sanderson. Easy.
Right.
And we just got one more Nightblood one.
So this questioner asked, if Nightblood was in the cognitive, what damage would he do? Brendan, if he were actually there. I thought you were going to go with the obvious one of what does he look like, but I'll raffle both of them.
When Brandon brings up a question, that's like, oh yeah, what does he look like in the cognitive? How would he actually be there? So that's, I don't know, but that's interesting.
It has been asked before. It has been raffled before.
Mm-hmm.
Well, clearly he's been through the cognitive realm. That would literally have to be the case because he got to Roshar.
Yeah.
Right?
But I think would be different if he was physically there versus his cognitive aspect.
Sure. Yeah. No,
because we do
absolutely.
see like Azure's blade.
Oh,
was brought there
you're
physically,
right.
and it doesn't look any different.
It's
so
just fine.
I assume.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Yeah.
I assume Nightblood would work the same way.
Yeah.
But his cognitive aspect would probably be weird.
And similarly, we have seen massively invested creatures in the cognitive realm, specifically the Unmade and Kolinar.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Without them actually being there. And those things are huge.
And Nightblood is the most invested object in the Cosmere.
But I would say far, far more invested than Ashrit Marm.
Well, I mean, Nightblood being the most invested object versus a highly invested thing, like...
Okay, fair.
A being made of investiture.
Like,
sure.
The Stormfather is more invested than Nightblood, probably, right? Maybe? I don't. I mean, maybe. It is kind of hard to compare, but, like, I don't know if we can make that comparison with something like
an
Unmade. Right. But
you're right.
But I do think Nightblood's cognitive aspect in Shadesmar would be very interesting.
Alarming.
Brandon brought it up, so that means it's probably important.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Also, as a follow-up / prequel to this question, there has been a very similar question asked in the past, and I don't remember where. But it was along the lines of, hey, if Nightblood was physically in the cognitive realm and it struck one of the spheres, what would actually happen?
Yeah.
And Brandon's answer was worrying because it was part, well, I haven't thought too much about that. It was part, I'm beginning to realize how actually terrifying Nightblood is. And part, well, I think it would destroy the thing that the sphere belonged to. What if there's a sphere for Roshar's cognitive aspect? Oh, I'm beginning to realize Nightblood might be problematic.
Oh, that Brandon just went off like that?
Yeah.
The trick would be finding the sphere that is...
Just go left and right. With, you can... I don't see a problem in obliterating the entire Cosmere several spheres at a time.
There is some good news, though. In that, if you were wielding Nightblood that way, it would probably kill you first, before you got to do that much damage. Now, could another person then pick up Nightblood? Well, yeah, I mean, that's not great, but...
Yeah.
And, what happens if you just leave Nightblood unsheathed in Shadespar?
Just toss it in the ocean. Yeah.
I think that would be, alarm bells blaring all over the spiritual realm, and, Shard's being like, yeah, no, that's bad. We are doing something about that.
Yeah, that may be...
That is the nice thing about the Cosmere. It's if something goes real bad, can a Shard act? Yes. Usually they don't want to, but if it's really bad, they can. Well, that's good to know. I completely forgot about that one. Which is not from this event, but...
No.
Yeah.
Speaking of, we should probably get moving.
Yes,
but
now...
Enough with Nightblood.
Yeah.
Let's move on to another cognitive being, Kelsier.
Kelsier.
An unknown questioner asks whether Kelsier has done any world hopping, and Brandon explains that Kelsier is bound to Scadrial in the same way that Spren are bound to Roshar, because of their connection and because of their cognitive beingness. It is possible to get off-world, he says, but Kelsier does not know what it is.
Which is probably a good thing.
Which is probably a good thing. So, all the fans of the crackpot theory that Kelsier founded the Ghostbloods, you need a different explanation.
Technically, it doesn't destroy that theory, because Ghostbloods are a world-hopping organization.
No. I'm saying you just need a different explanation about how he does that. I'm not saying...
Okay.
The center of the Ghostbloods on Scadrial, easy.
Pretty much. Hey, yeah, Teal. Yaddle. She's Scadrian. Of Scadrian descent.
Yeah. This next one, the questioner asks, what's the thing you're most excited about doing for Stormlight 4? Brandon, I've got a really cool thing set up for Wit's epilogue that I've been planning to do for a long time. So the Wit soliloquy at the end is going to be a little extra special.
Which I always love Wit's soliloquies in the epilogue, so if this one is going to be even more special, I'm excited. So, in this next one, the questioner asks, in Stormlight, with the way the Radiance armor works, is it going to be similar to an Aether of Night, where it grows, or do they summon it like the Shardblades? Brandon, someone's read Aether of Night. Raffo, you should find out before too much longer. I've been working very hard to keep that mechanism hidden until we can have some things like this happen on screen, but it's getting increasingly hard.
Book 4, Kaladin gets his plate. Easy.
Yeah.
Gotta be.
But this is, again, a really interesting idea that I don't think anyone has connected before with. So, if for those of you who have not read Aether of Night,
like me,
there is one of the ethers, Amberite, is a topaz-ish colored gemstone in a person's palm.
Topaz?
Yes. Yes. There's a reason I used the word topaz, because that's totally an Aether that Hoid was named after. That's an old theory of mine. But regardless,
no.
One of Amberite's abilities is it can grow a suit of amber colored armor around the person.
Oh. Yeah, okay, that colored armor, you say?
Amber? The color of the... Yeah.
Should we... maybe we should do an Aether of Night episode.
Maybe I should read Aether of Night.
Yeah, maybe I should.
For the record, Aether of Night is a good book, but it does not feel like a Brandon book.
And you can request Aether of Night on 17shard.com.
Mm-hmm.
And we might even get to it eventually.
Oh man. Oh, this next one, Evgeni. Oh.
So, moving on to yet another cognitive thing. Steel Dancer, an active member of our community and
I steal.
Stay in school, asks...
Stay in school, kids.
Yep. On Threnody, the shades, their eyes turn red when they get really mad. Is that the same thing as with the Voidbringers and all the other ones? So, first of all, Voidbringers, you're using the term a little incorrectly here. You should read Oathbringer. Brandon answers, I have a sub-theme in the Cosmere of the redness, and it's supposed to be intentional. So it's the same thing? Asks Steel Dancer. It is the same theme, but I do not mean to imply that it's the same shard. But it's the same effect? Asks Steel Dancer desperately, trying to get an answer. Yes, says Brandon. I'm doing it intentionally. Red eyes specifically are meant to mean something, but I use it a few other ways.
So, red, corrupted investiture.
Red eyes are meant to mean bad, I imagine.
Well, when you put it like that, yes, they are creepy. But like
anything not written in steel, anyone
red
anyone
things?
with eyes of red. I write these words in red eyes. No.
But it's not literally everyone with red eyes, because the Dustbringers and the Lightweavers both
And
get
that's
red eyes.
why you
evil.
always have a blue eyes white dragon and not a red eyes black dragon.
Right.
I was trying to work that in this entire time. Glad I got to fit that in there. You're welcome.
Shallan for Odium's champion.
Well, we can't. Maybe what red eyes and red things have we seen? We've seen the Thrill. We've seen obviously
well,
the Fused.
I wouldn't necessarily throw the Thrill in there,
Red
because it might
Mist.
just be naturally red rather than red because it's corrupted investiture. That is
that's
question
true.
that is still extant that people are wanting to ask.
Sure.
Okay, but it is red. So I'm listing red
Yes.
things, okay?
It is red.
just so we're like...
The Faceless Immortals at
Yep.
the end of the Bands of
Mhm.
Mourning.
Yep. Do we have anything else?
Well,
That's like-
the Fused, obviously.
Yeah.
Forms of power.
Storm form.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. I think that's everything. So,
Anything on Nalthis? I don't think anything on Nalthis.
other than just naturally red things, but that's not like this sort of thing. So,
I don't think anything on Scadrio except for
The Faceless
The-
Immortals.
Corrupted Kandra, I guess.
Well,
If that's
the
what they
evil
are.
Faceless Immortals. That's
If-
all we
that's
can say
Faceless
about that.
Immortals.
Yes, okay. But I'm saying corrupted Faceless Immortals because they also use the term for Kandra.
Yeah, but
yeah.
I think that's not necessarily corrupted if that's just their natural.
They don't need to be corrupted Kandra. It's just that's how a person from Scadrial is thinking about them. That they are
Yes.
like the Kandra, but are different beings in a
Yes.
similar flavor.
Sure.
Like, someone on Roshar would probably call them Weird Spren, right? Or, some...
They would be weird Amiens.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Weird, strange Amiens with red eyes. Oh, crazy. Yeah, so I feel like that's just a Scadrian thing to rationalize what they are.
I don't know. That's debatable, but we should not debate that right now.
Well, I mean, when we
Shades,
find the
obviously.
lost metal.
I feel like Harmony
Oh, yeah,
would
Shades.
know if some of his Cantrip were corrupted.
Well, yeah,
might.
right. That was the whole thing with Palm.
Yeah.
Obviously, yes. Anyway, that's all the red things. Let's go on to the next one. Also from Steel Dancer. And Steel asks, Taln, did he give into the torture around the events of Way of Kings? And Brandon says that in Way of Kings Prime, which he wrote in 2002, he'd been around a few years before he showed up in the narrative. And in the current outline, I don't have that the case, but I haven't written his book yet. So for canon, but it's a Word of Brandon canon, I'm going to say he's only been around for a couple of months before he shows up at the city. Now, first of all, Brandon has been saying this, it's Word of Brandon canon, more than a few times, so maybe that's just a new sort of thing that he's saying.
It's his new asterisk.
Well,
yeah, right.
No, I mean,
yeah.
Brandon has always been adamant that any information that he gives as a Word of Brandon is canon until he writes it otherwise.
Yeah, but like referring to it as Word of Brandon canon.
Okay,
yeah,
sure.
That's a new
is
thing.
new.
But that makes sense. So he broke just a little bit before. So
so
that's neat.
Taln best human.
Well, I mean, we knew that.
Yeah, we knew that. And Matt's not here, so that we can say that.
Plus, he's wrong. So even if he were here, what does it matter?
Exactly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This is interesting to me because one of the things we've talked about in the Taln fandom for a long time is
in the Taln fandom.
It's a subculture thing. Don't worry about it.
Okay,
we have matching T-shirts and
okay,
lower back tattoos.
Okay,
it's just Taln's face. So the thing, the relevant thing here is when he appears at the gates of Kholinar, he is described as raggedy and his body glistens with moisture, as if he... And so that has drawn parallels to shard blades, which also drip with moisture as they appear. And so we were wondering, well, did he just appear in the physical realm and the moisture is an artifact of that realmic transition?
Yeah.
But if he's been around for a couple of months, then no, that has not been the case, and the moisture is probably just either
from swimming in a river,
or there was a river nearby. I don't actually know. I think there's a river that passes through Kholinar, isn't there?
There's one nearby, I think. Yes, there's absolutely one nearby, because that's what they go from the...
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah,
like there has to be
from Kholinar in the cognitive realm. Yeah, right.
Oathbringer. We should all read it.
We should definitely reread Oathbringer because it is getting rusty. Because turns out a lot of things happen in Oathbringer.
Yeah, who knew? It's a big book.
But some would say it's filler, I guess. I don't understand those people, but...
Okay, so this next one is also Steel Dancer.
Hi.
And at the beginning of Words of Radiance, the assassin Liss is Chana, referring to the Herald of the Dustbringers. Brandon, evil laugh. I will laugh at that. Sorry.
I think this is still a theory that is very much alive.
Yeah.
I believe, because this is weird. It could be, maybe not. Like, it is definitely plausible.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
cool.
I like it.
Yeah, no. I mean, if she's not, then I would also not be surprised, but I wouldn't be surprised either way, you know? Cool.
Another prominent member of our community, Arshara, asks, does a region's cultural identity ever have anything to do with their spiritual DNA? Brandon confirms that as a yes. So, like, people expect Alethi to be tall, so they're more likely to be tall. Is the clarification follow-up? Oh, that's what we're saying. That no, not that part. You're saying like how someone does. I don't have it working like that right now. That would take more. I would say no on that. Yes, but no.
So, yes, it has an effect, but not the effect you were thinking.
Yep, that's my read on the answer.
Yeah, me too.
Which the effect it does have is more in tune with what we see on Cell.
I think it's like a connection thing. Like, it's not like necessarily affecting your physical, but more like the connection that you have with like a certain region, right? And the spiritual DNA probably has to do with those sort of aspects of things more so than like causing those physical changes, because that's what regular DNA is for, right?
Physical DNA.
Physical DNA. Cognitive DNA. Not a thing, but...
No, there is cognitive DNA.
Is there?
Yeah, that is. I'm pretty sure. No, maybe not from you, but like
No,
there
that's
is
not. That is definitely not from me.
Okay, but like
is there
that's
cognitive
an
DNA?
ancient word of Brandon. That
Wow,
there is
really?
physical, cognitive, and spiritual DNA.
I totally don't remember that.
From 2014.
No, it's before that. There's an example from before that.
I don't remember this at all. Next one. Arshara asks, and this one's crazy. This is spicy. How many times did a herald break and let the fused return to Roshar? Brandon. Oh, so how many desolations were there total? Arshara. Between the Oath Pact and the last desolation. Brandon. Not as many as people say there are. Arshara. More than 50, less than 50. Brandon. He misinterprets 50 to be 15. And Brandon said, oh, I would guess offhand more than 15, but not much more. That's the sort of thing I'd have to look at the timeline on. Not as many as they think, but more than 15. And Brandon says, oh, you asked for more than 50. More than 15, less than 50. This is crazy because in the early lore, like the thing with Way of Kings is that the lore of Vorinism is that the Voidbringers came 9 and 99 times, right? Or something like that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which Brandon has said that's more cultural, like the 40 days and 40 nights thing.
For sure. But having an upper bound on Desolations and a lower bound on Desolations, ooh,
exciting.
Sign me up for this, yeah. Ooh, that kind of means that the period of Desolations is not as long as we think it was.
Well,
it was still like 6,000 years.
So what does the Stormfather say? He says the first were
Centuries.
hundreds of years apart, and then towards the end they were several years apart.
Yeah,
with the last two being less than a year, I think.
I thought it was less than 2 years or something.
No, I think it was less than a year, but whatever.
Very nonsensical value like that. So we could kind of plot something.
But the Desolation period wasn't 6,000 years. Because we're getting after the last Desolation, we got 4,500 years, right? So I don't think...
Yeah, it's
right.
It's 6,000 years from the shattering of Aiden Alzium to the last Desolation. Ish. Roughly.
Yeah. Right.
So
but it's there's a lot of time period and
Yeah. Okay, sure. But if we are looking at more than 15, but not much more than 15, like we take 20 as some kind of a ballpark.
20, 25, maybe.
Yeah. If we are looking at hundreds of years between the first few and less than a year then between the last two, ballpark it at 100, maybe 50 years on average between.
Yeah. I feel like
we're looking at maybe 1,000, like let's say between 500 is too low. Between 1,000 and 2,000 years?
Maybe like 2,000 years.
I would say it's longer than that.
This would have been smart if I made a plot and really plotted out let's create a graph and estimate the decay rate that when the heralds would break and kind of estimate that, but I did not do that math, so maybe we'll do that another time.
Yeah, I would say closer to 4,000.
I would need to do the math. I would need to do the arithmetic, which I have not done.
So the other thing I wanted to bring up is that I suspect one of the reasons this question was asked was because of a theory floating around that the number of desolations matches the number of the unmade, or the number of times a herald broke matches the number of the unmade, and that's how the unmade were created. Every time a herald breaks, something happens and an unmade spawns. Obviously, since we've had more than 15 desolations, it's not exactly 9.
No.
Then that theory is out of the window.
Yeah, for sure. Great. That was a good question on the Desolations. And joining us late because he was stuck in traffic is Ben. Hi, Ben.
Hi, guys. I just got off the UK's largest car park, known as the M1. It's a great place to be.
Great. We all know all about that.
Yes, the M1.
Yes.
I think the only thing I know about the M1 is that in the book Good Omens by Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman, it's literally designed by demons.
Well, that is why you were stuck in traffic. So,
Yeah, it's every Sunday night I have to drive like an hour down it, and that hour always turns into an hour and a half or 2 hours. So that's a little snippet of my life, guys, if you're interested.
So Arshara asked another good question that destroys a theory of one of the Shardcasters.
I'm surprised Brandon answered this personally.
Yeah. So the Fused were looking something at the palace at Kholinar at the end. Were they looking for Hoid's cryptic? Brandon. Yes, they were. Good question. Did people think they were looking for the Black Gemstone? That would be the other big guess. But they were looking for the cryptic.
They were like mining. Like what?
I mean, I guess they were breaking down the rocks so that
I guess.
a fuse, because the fuse was the cryptic was hiding in the wall, and so if you break everything down to dust, the Spren is not gonna have anywhere to hide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because unlike honor Spren, cryptics have a much more visible physical presence. They can't go invisible.
Yeah, well, the Shardcast theory was that they were looking for Baidu Misham's prison under Kholinar.
The theory of some members of the Shardcast.
Look, I liked Windrunner's theory. That was good. That was
It was good.
It was interesting.
The official majority Shardcast ruling.
The official Shardcast stands on what the Fused were doing there.
Yeah. But they were looking for the cryptic. Why would they be looking for the cryptic?
So my thoughts on that were that it's not just any cryptic.
Okay.
Huh.
I was thinking that Elokar's cryptic was very important one in the same way, well, in a similar way to, I guess, how Pattern is supposed to be very important, or at least very famous. So, a cryptic prince, if you will.
I disagree. I think you've got your massive Fused army, and the Fused very much see the Radiance as their biggest threat. And in order to get a Radiant, you need a person, and they're more than happy to kill people. So they probably want to do something to get rid of the Spren as well, because you also need a Spren for a Radiant. And once that Spren has already made the transition to the physical realm, as we saw with Timber, then it's much easier for that Spren to then bond with just another person. And so by getting the Spren whilst it's in the physical realm, that means,
They can also corrupt. Shianat can corrupt it, too.
Yeah,
I don't think Odium knows that, though. Or it's not like, she's not doing that for Odium. I think
but Odium clearly knows that Shianat can enlighten Spren, and so maybe that's a thing that Odium would want her to try on other Spren?
Including
I
the
don't know.
Oathgate
It's
Spren.
Yeah, Shianat enlightening the Earthgate Spren was a trap, I assume, planned by Odium.
Yeah, but
yes,
I see what you mean,
was,
though, Ian.
But, like,
Yeah.
doing it for Radiant Spren, I don't think is part of Odium's plan. I think that's why Renarin is such a disruptive effect on his plans.
Yeah.
Right. But it could be that they tried to, like, because she says we've never been able to enlighten anything as complicated as Oathgate Spren. So Odium knows that, okay, that worked. Now let's see if we can do this with a Radiant Spren.
And maybe Odium doesn't know that Shianat already did that.
Way ahead of you, buddy.
I don't think so, because Odium has enough, like, I don't think he would need to do that. It's like, I think Ben is on the right track. We don't want more Radiance. So they probably have some way of, like, preventing Spren from getting in. But if there's a Spren already in the city, they want to deal with that.
Yeah.
I don't think a single Radiant Spren would warrant the amount of effort they're throwing into whatever they're doing.
I think you're underestimating the impact a single Radiant can do.
And also the amount of effort that getting a couple of slaves with like one or two Fused overseers smashing apart a building isn't that much of a resource drain.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay, that's true.
Because it's like Odium doesn't care how long it takes.
Yeah, sure. It could be just them, double doing a double duty, finding something for the humans to do and looking for the Spren.
And that does seem sensible for it to just be as simple as, well, I mean, we Gotta have something for you to do, and also we can just eliminate a potential threat, and that's always good.
2 chickens, 1 stone.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Leaving cryptics and odium and other things.
And Arshara's questions.
And Arshara's questions. Prince Dusty asks a clarification question about something that showed up during the Pixel Project event, which we discussed last time, or last Wobcast. At the Pixel Project event, you talked about a further extent of Cultivation's magic and than just the Boon and the Bane.
Third light.
Third light.
Yeah.
Are there any people alive at the end of Oathbringer who were influenced by that magic? Prince Dusty, great setting up and leaving Brandon as little wiggle room as possible. Good job.
Top tier questions in this one.
We're doing the okay emoji on screen right now. And Brandon says, yes, lift. Well, I guess that's a boon, isn't it? Yes, there are such people. But nobody on screen that has cultivation magic other than boons or curses from the Night Watcher. Yes, there is such a thing. No, there's no one else on screen. But what Lift does is a hint.
I would like to point out an excellent comment that our Fan X Words of Brandon episode had, where someone said, what if Lift is, when she's eating, is just creating that cultivation light instead of Stormlight per se, and using that to fuel things?
It's a good idea.
And I'm like, and they're just interpreting that as Stormlight?
Because it still fuels Surge Binding.
Doesn't Wendell say that's Stormlight, though?
Ooh,
I kind of forgot.
Would he know, though?
Yeah, I don't know. Well, yeah, he would forget things coming in.
And not only forget things,
physical,
but
sure.
even if he had perfect knowledge of how the Radiants work, he doesn't necessarily know what's happening in Lift's metabolism.
Yeah.
Like,
he is in the physical realm at that point. Like, he's not, like, seeing.
Right. Not only that, but I think he also refers to her power as investiture a lot of the time. Like, he doesn't say you don't have enough Stormlight, he says you don't have enough investiture. That's right.
So I am kind of on that train, because I think that's a good idea.
I think that's a great idea.
I do think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Because especially when Brandon says, but what Lift does is a hint.
Yeah.
Right? Like, how else am I supposed to interpret that? Like that?
Or the metabolizing things for Third Light is how you get Third Light. Rather than the storm.
Yeah. I like it because it's kind of like you got to cultivate it within your own body kind of thing.
So, on that note, before we get too excited about it, it is interesting that the external effects of all of this seem to manifest in the same way as Stormlight does. The enhanced physical properties, the sustenance, the glow.
Yeah.
True.
So, maybe not.
Maybe, yeah.
Well, that's true.
It also could be the part where Lift goes into the visions without the Stormfather's, approval.
Yeah, what's up with that?
Yeah, that's always like I've always seen that, and I'm kind of like either the Night Watcher is messing with the Stormfather directly, or Cultivation is messing with the Stormfather directly, because
I think it's the Night Watcher because siblings.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, which is what was implied, because the Stormfather was not happy with that. However, though, I feel like on this topic, maybe we should do a dedicated Lift episode where we reread the Lift stuff, because I'm I don't really remember this too much. I think David would, because he wrote the Lift article, but I'm yeah.
Sure, toss it on the list.
A little more rusty.
Yeah.
So let's table that one for later.
So the next WOB we've got is another one from Prince Dusty, who essentially was asking about how previously Brandon has talked about how AVR abilities and Allomantic abilities, they kind of have a bit of similarities between them. Sure. And Brandon basically just said that whilst they do have some similarities, you're going to be able to do stuff with Allomancy that you can't do with an AVR, and you're going to be able to do stuff. There's some AVRs that count abilities that Allomancy can't. They're kind of related in the same way that, like healing across with Stormlight and healing with Allomancy is kind of, Furukami, is kind of similar, or Lightweaving with Yolish and Roshar and Lightweaving.
Similar abilities will look similar.
Yeah, some abilities look similar, some planets and some magics will share abilities, and that's just the way things will work.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And he also said that AVR are known in the Cosmere, but are very, very rare.
Yes.
Which, that reminds me, in an older word of Brandon said that a lot of AVR are used for navigation, which I expect
Really?
once we get into space, they'll be used for
Whoa.
that.
Interesting.
I have questions on that. That's interesting.
yeah.
I also don't remember that well, but okay.
Me either.
Mhm.
But I just, blank on all these things on
Yeah.
the First of the Sun. So,
It's like how Dicey and Amiens are going to be important for Mistborn
Yeah.
Era 4, because
Ansibles.
Ansibles.
Presumably because Ansibles.
Presumably because of
I'm sure they're
Ansibles.
important for other reasons.
Which, for the people who do not know what Ansible means, it's faster than light communication.
Instant communication.
Instant
Yep.
communication.
This is
You
my
can
little
split yourself,
favorite pet
yep.
theory.
This next one from Zazumbi was asking about aluminum foiled hats blocking emotional allomancy. And they were wondering how much aluminum was required, like an aluminum colander, aluminum headband. And Brandon says it has to be tinfoil at least. Thicker's probably better, the way that things work. So the bare minimum is tinfoil. And also he said in later eras of Mistborn, when powers are decreasing, then that would be completely reasonable.
Which I kind of hate that he's calling it tinfoil.
Yeah,
'Cause it's not tinfoil.
No, well, yeah, but like lots of people call tinfoil, but you get at the store as aluminum foil. Like,
Yes,
that's
because
very
originally
common.
it was tinfoil,
Right.
but
I
it's
think-
aluminum foil now.
I remember this where I was doing like a science project and I'm like, oh, tin has this property, but then it's like, oh no, this does not burn there, like for like a science project or something, and like, oh no, this is not tin. Got it.
Yeah.
You don't make that mistake again.
No.
Cool.
This next one is one kind of close to my heart because it deals
Of
with
course.
Elantris,
Yeah.
and it's, was the wall around Elantris soulcast? Good question. It was not soulcast. Excellent question. And then another questioner came in and asked, like, something inaudible, find out later maybe? Brandon concludes with, their own magic was involved in the creation of Elantris. The local magic was involved. Which means, or at least heavily implies, that it was not Aeona or Devotion that created the city, which was a very commentary that I myself
I see.
espoused.
Yeah, no, that does imply
Okay.
that, yeah.
So we're probably looking at the Elantrians using Aeondor to help them build Elantris or spawn Elantris in the exact shape and dimensions that they needed to.
Mhm.
I imagine Devotion helped. in,
But like
possibly.
how weird is it though that like the Elantrians had their local magic to create Elantris before Elantris existed, considering how central Elantris is to the Elantrians.
Right.
It's not as essential as people think. It just
Okay.
boosts the power.
Okay.
The magic.
like,
Yeah.
there's
Oh.
lots of Celish magics, right? Like,
Yeah.
Like, these... When we say Elantrians, we're thinking that that's very impressive, but those pre-Elantris Elantrians would be much more like, the other sorts of...
Say the
Okay.
Forgers.
Right,
Yeah.
like... And
Which makes me
Khan
think-
and all sorts of things.
I wonder if you can replicate the effect of Elantris in other countries
You
on
probably
Cell,
could. Almost certainly.
Yeah,
and why people haven't done that.
maybe we will see that. That would be really
I guess-
interesting.
I guess at the time of the events of Elantris, people didn't really know why the shape of Elantris was important.
Yeah, a lot of that
Yeah.
knowledge was lost, and I don't think the Elantrians wanted to share that.
That's
Yeah.
probably fair.
Like, during its height.
Yeah.
And also, it's so specific.
Yeah, and I don't think people would think of doing that because forgery has power-enhancing symbols that Shai knows about, or at least she knows more than she thinks she does. So it's like, but making the connection, like, oh, what if we make a giant city to make our stamps more powerful?
In this exact shape that we need that
Yeah.
reflect, it's...
Mhm.
And not only the land, but you have to get the right symbol that corresponds with the land. Like, it's pretty complicated and very specific. So
Yeah.
I don't blame people it's rare for people to have figured that out.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I can see that.
And
But
like,
I think
it wouldn't
Could.
work for the place where it's in the potions, the place that makes the potions, Travel or something. Like, how do you make a city out of a giant potion? Like,
Well, I mean, the creation of Elantris was a complicated thing, right? Because Aeon Rail is the Aeon for spirit, and that plays into, well, it's spirit, but it's also soul, and so the soul of the nation. Like, there's so many moving pieces there.
see, I think it means, in quotation marks, soul and spirit because of what it does in Aeon Door. Like, it enhances investiture. Like, that's...
I agree. Aeons mean fire because it can create fire.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe.
Which is why the whole weird thing where Aeon that means wisdom is used for healing doesn't make sense to me.
Look, people are stupid. Some people just name the things stupid things, and they're just like, oh, we need a symbol for that, whatever.
Next question comes from an unknown questionnaire. Is Hoid the secret weapon that shattered Aeronalsium? No. Good question, says Brandon.
Good to know.
Okay, so
He might have wielded the weapon,
Hoid.
but
He might have
was-
wielded
Yeah,
the weapon.
But he himself is not the weapon, which
So-
is fine, because Hoid's weird, so good confirmation.
Hoid was not the aluminum bomb. Hoid was the aluminum bombardier.
No. Stop.
Hoid had the detonator. That's where it was.
I hate you guys.
The next one is, does Szeth ever get to figure out Nightblood's name, or will he always just call Nightblood Sword Nimi? And Brandon says, that's a Rapho too. And I never even picked up in Oathbringer that Szeth doesn't actually ever call Nightblood Nightblood.
Nope. No.
Nope.
And also, Nightblood isn't even the sword's original name anyway. No one's ever asked. Szeth has not asked, hey, what's your name? Because remember, Ben,
Yes.
if that's his original name would be imprinted in his personality, because those things initially are like deep in his mind. So if Szeth asked, then Nightblood would just say what his original name was.
Ooh.
And Nightblood is not his original name. That's what Vasher called him. And that's what we're just calling him. But, that's great. Speaking of
Awakened Blades.
Yeah, speaking of Awakened Blades, the next questioner asks, does Vivenna/Asher's sword have a name? Brandon, yes, asterisk.
What if, hear me out,
Okay.
what if Vivenna/Asher's blade is called asterisk?
I was just going to say that.
I love it. That's it. You're done. We're good.
Easy.
We've got it easy.
Let's cross-reference that with every time Brandon said asterisk and see if there's a correlation with that and Vivenna's blade and see if we can determine that.
And
Okay,
roll
but-
credits.
But real talk, why would he say yes when clearly the blade is sentient?
Yeah.
Right? Like, it was feeling out the Sprand in the cognitive realm.
Mhm.
I mean,
remember, on the ship.
sentient, sapient.
It's alive
Yeah.
to some degree. It has
Like,
opinions.
what if it's like a dump sprint?
It could be. That's what I was thinking.
Like a wind sprint.
That's basically what I've been thinking of it
Windsprand
as.
versus Honor Sprand, maybe?
Sure.
Yeah, where it's awakened and it has opinions and feelings on things, but I think maybe the asterisk could be it doesn't have a name for itself, and it has a name, but its name is just what Vivenna called it. Like, it's not actually got... It doesn't self-identify
Not in the
as
same
anything.
way that Nightblood has its own.
Well, wait, but
Maybe.
the original name that Nightblood had, wouldn't that just be what Vasher and Shashara named it?
It depends, right? Because you're dumping a whole lot of investiture into a sword, and that investiture manifests sapience on its own. Maybe it has innate understanding of what it is, and by virtue of developing sapience, chooses a name or has like an understanding of what its name should be, in the same way that shards have an understanding of what their intent is. And then comes Vasher and says, hey, you're Nightblood.
Yeah.
I think Nightblood would take more issue with being called Nightblood if he felt that, like, oh wait, no, my name is this other thing that I have
That's
intrinsic
true.
knowledge of.
Yeah.
That is true.
Unless he's just used to it by now.
But he doesn't change very much. I don't know.
Yeah, like Like,
This is weird.
yeah.
Okay, kids, don't awaken swords, because
Well, yeah, because they'll absorb up lots of investiture and be very scary. So don't do that, kids.
And then we have to debate about their nature.
Stay in school,
and-
kids. Don't awaken swords. Don't go to school for awakening swords, okay?
Okay, so this next one is asked by Joe Zombie, who is asking about whether there were any Bondsmiths at the time of the Reckoning. And Brennan's like,
wait, the reckoning?
the Recreance.
The
That's
time
staying in.
of recreance
That's
has
staying in.
come.
Okay. And Brennan's like, that's a plot point. You're supposed to be asking that question. And Joe Zombie clarifies that he's trying to figure out if the sibling was bonded and if that's what caused the sibling to do what the sibling did. And Brennan just like, let's just say this is Rafa with the promise that I intend to answer the question relatively quickly.
Okay, first of all, there definitely was a bondsmith because that was Malishi.
Thank you.
There was one
Yes.
bondsmith, and we definitely know that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's the end of it, and so the sibling was not bonded.
Yes.
So yeah, we know the answer to this.
Yeah. And the Recreance, like the sibling started receding before the Recreance. So it's like,
Yes.
I take issue with this question.
Yeah,
Was-
no, we know the answer to all these things.
We don't know who Militia was bonded to, do we?
It's
No, we don't.
heavily implied that it's the Stormfather because the
Yes.
Stormfather was wounded in the Recreance.
Yeah, that would make sense.
I was going to say, so
Oh, that's true.
it's not
Yeah, yeah,
explicitly spelled out in the books. The reason we know this is because we know Malishi was involved in, was the only one. Oh, wait, do we have? I think we do. It's one of the gem archives. That Malishi was like
It's
the only
Gem
bondsmith.
Archive
Yeah.
and in the In-World Words of Radiance, where they're like, Malishi was like, yo,
only one at the
I'm
time.
going to use my power to stop the Voidbringers, which was imprisoning Bide and Mishram, which we saw in
Yes.
the Gem Archive.
Which,
Like, this is all very clear.
Yeah.
Well, okay, not very clear.
It's not very clear, but
it
it's-
is
it's-
there.
Intuitively obvious to the casual observer.
Look, I
Banned.
wrote the false desolation article, so like, oh, I see what happened here.
Mhm.
But anyway, great. Let's move on.
Let's move on.
It's definitely Malishi definitely wasn't bonded with the sibling. That's for sure the case.
Yeah.
Next question. We're back to Cell. Which is not a phrase I usually say, because it's usually, we're back to Roshar, because 43% of all characters are
speaking.
Rosharan. But no, we're back on Cell. Let's say a Bloodsealer got his hands on a Decor monk's bones. Could it still access the door? Inaudible. Could they even be reanimated, and could they still be useful? That's a very good question. So the bones are a conduit, much like allomantic metal is. That's interesting to know.
Yeah.
Allomantic metals are pretty easy to affect investitures. I would say getting a hold of a Decor monk's bones likely would work. Likely, they're not going to resist very much, but I'm going to say harder to access magic than you think, but easier than with regular bones. So I'm going to give you a yes.
Which is interesting.
It is interesting, and in a past episode, we talked about metal being conductive to investiture in some way, potentially. And
Oh, sure.
if that is the case, then if we put, regular bones on one end or one side and metal on another side, then the core monk bones would be away from the regular bones and like somewhere in the middle where
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I just ask a question on this? The phrase "allomantic metals are pretty easy to affect investitures." I'm having a hard time parsing what that is supposed to mean.
I think it's supposed to be allomantic metals allow you to do things with investiture pretty easily.
Yeah. It's
And
like,
Yeah. I'm
Okay.
reading this as out of all the compounds. I in a previous episode, I think we also mentioned that maybe an allomancer can burn other things
Mhm.
other than metals.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
And so very specific metals are kind of the easiest keys to ruins and preservations, or I guess preservations investiture pool.
Yeah.
But other metals are more difficult, and yet other compounds, like you just can't burn, you can't access any investiture with them.
I don't even think it's necessarily like allomancy restricted. Like it's in the Cosmere, certain metals are more easier to affect with investiture, like to get investiture going, which is why those metals are used for Allomancy.
I have a question. Would you guys consider what Lift does the same process as what Allomancers do?
No.
No.
Oh,
No.
wait. Actually,
Because this has been explicitly asked by Brennan, I think by you, where Brennan originally says, like, oh yeah, they're the same thing, and then, like, as explaining, it's like, oh no, these are totally different.
Right, so with Lift... No, I don't think it was me, but it may have been in Chicago.
It was definitely in Chicago.
With Lift, she actually turns food into investiture.
Yeah,
Like,
she's
the food is not a
metabolizing
key.
it.
Yeah, whereas the metals, the key, which is grabbing investiture from somewhere else.
Yeah.
Which is like a different thing, right?
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay, I would just like to read this word of Brandon from the Firefight Chicago sighting, where Argent asks this exact question.
Yay, it's not me this time who forgot his own word of Brandon. Yay!
Look, it happens to me all the time.
Yeah, and it's
Not usually on the show, though, so listeners don't know.
Yeah, it's like-
but it usually happens to me.
Fine. Have your moment.
similar to the metals Argent, so like Gate, Brandon, yes. And then Brandon's like, she can metabolize, she can draw. It's not actually the food. It's not like the metals. Not exactly. It's not. What she can do is metabolize into investiture instead of sugar.
okay.
Okay, good talk.
I want to loop back around to what Ian was saying about how are some metals in the Cosmere easier to affect investiture with, and that's why they were picked for Allomancy.
Mhm.
I'm going to go the other way and say the reason that they affect investiture easier is because of what Preservation of Ruin did, because we know that what they did is affects all of those metals in the Cosmere. You can go to Cell and get some copper, and an Allomancer could still use that and burn that.
Well,
I don't think anything they did affected the metals.
that's just saying, if you have this spiritual connection to preservation, these are the keys that will unlock my power.
Yeah.
That's what preservation did, right?
They didn't affect the metal in any way.
I'd argue that on
Probably.
a spiritual level, they most likely did.
Yeah, I don't know how much that matters, though. Like, it's
Yeah.
like such a minor thing because you have to already have the connection to preservation to use those metals.
Yeah.
And
I
it's
think-
just like the
yeah.
chemical compound that it's the structure of it that matters,
Hey, look,
not
if-
anything they're doing.
if when we get more information on how to build Fabrials comes out and all of the metals they use in Fabrials are all the Allomantic metals, then I'm gonna be like, look, it's the Allomantic
Okay.
metals.
Well,
Fine.
that doesn't contradict anything I just said.
Okay.
Okay, let's
At
put,
all.
let's put
Let's move
Pedantic
on.
Cast on the back burner.
Let's move on. I still think that word of Brandon is quite difficult to parse, but it's been a while since I've gotten the details of Blood Sealing. But let's go to this next one, which is super spicy.
So this next one is from Mason Wheeler, who asks,
Yeah.
one of the letters in Oathbringer suggests that the shards had a pact to all go their separate ways, and some of them held to it, and some of them didn't. Which Brandon said yes. Mason says, out of all of them, how is it possible that one of the ones that didn't is the one whose nature is to obsessively keep your word at all costs? And he's referring to honor there, obviously.
Yeah, of course.
Brandon says he would argue that he kept his word. And Mason said, so a loophole. Brandon says he wouldn't even call it a loophole.
Excellent question, Mason. Top tier.
Yeah. So what
What?
I think
Yeah, pretty much.
is that
Yeah,
the
what?
pact was not to interfere with each other. But in Honor's mind, if he and Cultivation, who he was romantically involved with,
Right.
if they work together, they're not technically interfering with each other.
They're just working
Because
together.
they're working together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically the pact in his mind was like, don't mess with other people's toys. But
I'm not going to mess with endowment, but me and my wife, we're going to go.
Yeah, Our bank account is a joint bank account.
yeah.
Right. Yeah. Pretty much. That seems most reasonable.
I'll say that seems because my brain was going in the direction of they said, oh, everyone only gets like one planet. And then they would argue, there's like 3 planets in Roshar, and like we're just gonna. So that's
On
his.
average, each
On
one of us
That-
only gets.
I do find that funny, but,
So yeah,
but I think Ian's is more sensible.
absolutely. Yeah.
I'm so glad that this next one comes in the same time that we were talking about Nightblood ascending, because this questioner asks, would it be possible for an inanimate object that was invested to the point of sentience ascend to Shardhood? And earlier in the episode, well, if Nightblood eats a bunch of investiture, yeah, I mean, Shardhood's just a level of investiture. Just gotta have enough.
Yeah.
Brandon, to become a vessel of Adenalcium or become a shard, though, this is a tricky question because the power left alone will become sapient. And at that point, the distinction between being a shard and a vessel is fine, but still extant. And I would say that the power could not become a vessel in the same way because it's defined as something different. But it is possible for the power to be left alone and to gain sapience on its own. The questioner. The example we were thinking of was Cell. It was stated in Arcanum that the landscape itself was invested to the point of, could the planet of Cell be the vessel of devotion?
The vessel of
Brandon,
demotion.
what did I say?
You were about to say vessel of demotion.
Yeah. Yes. Brandon, at this point, it's playing semantics, and I would say no. But there are people in Cosmere that would argue that the semantic distinction is irrelevant and that it is the same.
Which is interesting because in ages past, before we got the term vessel,
Yes.
Brendan was like, oh no, the
Yeah.
person just becomes the shard.
That's right. Yeah,
So the
he
fact
said that for
he's
years.
saying like there's a difference between being a shard and a vessel, like that,
Yeah.
like there is
he
difference
is
there,
distinguishing that more of these. Yeah.
which
Well,
I think
That
this
is
is
a
an
difference.
example of Brandon realizing there should be a distinction there,
yeah.
obviously, because fandom
I mean,
thinks there should be a distinction.
We're dealing
there.
with large epics that are very detailed, and it's like, no, we do need to do that.
Do you
That's-
guys think that at some point in the Cosmere we're going to see a vesselish shard that has gained sapience? And
He's
Absolutely.
been talking about that
Yeah.
a while, so yeah, I kind of,
I wonder
Like,
if
it
we'll
has
that
to
would be
happen at this
crazy.
point. Like,
I
yeah,
think that'd be fun.
yeah,
I think it'd be interesting because, like,
yeah.
they'd probably be pretty one-trick pony kind of thing, personality-wise.
On a side note, talking about vessels is always a little weird to me because in my language, the word literally means happy or joyous. And so there's always a small part of my brain that goes, the shard of joy.
this next questioner asked about where the idea for the girl who looked up came from. And Brendan's just like grew out of his love for folktale and fairy tale, specifically the panoply of Pandora-esque myths from around the world, which makes sense. This
Yeah.
is absolutely a Pandora myth.
Oh, that makes sense. Cool.
Question number next from Podman36 asks about human AVR worm symbiosis and whether humans can be... Essentially, if humans can learn to utilize the abilities that the worms... So, if you don't know, the reason AVRs have powers is because they eat worms that give them those powers.
Right.
And the person is asking whether humans can also do that because that's been denied in the past. And the answer is pretty much no. It's not going to work if the human is adult. It's not going to work if the human is baby. It's not going to work if the human undergoes some kind of training montage where they do whatever with the worms. It's just the biology is too different. The gut flora is too different.
Gotta love that gut flora.
I'm good.
Prime, well, not prime real estate for the AVR worms. But through the generations, through things like selective breeding and maybe I'm speculating genetic engineering, maybe theoretically possible.
Cool.
Tinfoil hat theory. Allomancers can burn worms in their bodies and get the power.
Espoused.
More things elementically viable. Worms.
Worms!
That's how you get
Wormomancy?
Wormomancer.
Wormomancer.
Great.
What's the Latin word for worm?
I was about to ask,
the
dude,
internet.
I was going to say, did they have worms in ancient Latin places? But
They
then
have
probably, yeah.
worms.
Probably.
Yeah. Worms are pretty universal.
It's
Yeah.
a new. The worms are a new invention.
These kids these days with their fancy new worm.
Vermis.
Oh,
Vermomancer.
Vermomancer. It's probably also where vermin comes from.
Probably.
Yes, definitely.
And also, obviously, the Old English worm or worm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Moving
on.
Cool. Yeah. Wormless and over. So Podman36 then also asks. So we know that. Oh yeah. Speaking of insects. So we know that this is Seer
Great
Amiens.
segue.
And we know that there are Seer, Amiens, and human hybrids like the Natanathans. Do Dizian Amiens hybrids exist? And if not, could they? Which Brandon makes a face and says, I don't think the biology is compatible. Which
Good.
I'm glad we got that confirmation.
I would like to point out that makes sense.
Yep.
But I would also like to point out that Brandon has also said, Adenalcium created certain races with a similar intent so that they can crossbreed, like humans and singers. And so I would just like to say that it is interesting that the Dizians presumably were created by Adenalcium, and I guess they were just created with a different purpose.
Yeah.
Right?
All of the humanoid species were designed to interbreed. The freaky 10,000 crumblings in a trench coat. No.
Adenalcium just didn't like him.
He was like, it's a bit too far. Yeah.
But I really want Ansibles later.
Yes. Yeah. And then we are a family podcast here, so we're going to move on quickly.
Yep. This next one, questioner asks, on Threnody, is there more than one metal that affects shades? Brandon, technically a Rapho.
Interesting.
What is
so
it?
like silver prevents shades from going past, right? So
Yeah.
that's what they're referring to here.
Why technically, though?
Why is this a technical Rapho? Why not just a Rapho?
Is it
Because I think
Yeah.
this is something that's explicitly planned to be discussed in the Threnody novel,
Yeah.
if I had to guess.
And probably isn't just a big plot point because there's not going to be shades there, maybe? I don't know. So it's just like, technically you'll see a thing, but it maybe doesn't matter too much.
Because I expect aluminum would have some sort of effect,
Yeah.
Probably, yeah.
just for aluminum weirdness.
Yeah.
Sure.
So this next questioner talks about, so I have a weird type of amputation where they reattach my foot back onto my leg, sort of like a inaudible. Would Stormlight Healing be able to heal that? Brennan, a lot of that's going to depend on perspective. I would say yes, in most cases it would be able to. So the questioner continues, so it would grow the leg back to how it normally was. Brennan, it would take a little work, but it would. But your perception is going to influence it.
Yep. Pretty standard.
Mhm.
Your perception influences your spiritual aspect, and that's,
I feel like the
more
inaudible
baked
here
in.
may have been important.
Yeah.
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 Because it seems like this is a strange scenario, so it would have been interesting to know the extent of Stormlight.
Yeah, for sure.
It's probably something like it's attached, but it might not, like all of the nerves might not have been attached fully. So it works, but not as well as a normal foot.
If you're this questioner, comment below and tell
Please,
us what...
please.
Or even
that
better,
would be good.
register an account on
Arcanum and then just edit it in there, yeah.
because
Fantastic.
our ears are not healed by Stormlight, and we can't hear good.
Not all of us are Joffwu.
Not all of us are Jafwa.
No, that's true. So you can find these words of Brandon on wob.coppermine.net. So register for an account there. And next week, we will do another one of these because there's still more to do. But right now, it is time for...
Who's that
back?
Cosmere character? Yeah, you're not stealing my announcement.
Okay, fine.
Okay, so for the listeners at home, this is the game where you send in 5 clues and a character to who'sthatcosmiccharacter@gmail.com, and I will read the clues off one by one, and these guys have to guess who the character is before we get to the 5th clue, because if they're unable to guess the 5th clue, you win, and they all lose, because they suck. Right.
And they die.
this is Who's That Cosmic Character to their death.
A new game show coming to the 70 Chart YouTube channel.
Well,
Welcome to the Cosmere games.
We've spoken about doing a sudden death one where you're only allowed one guess in the whole game, which I'm looking
And
at.
then you suddenly die.
And then you just suddenly die if you get it wrong. I like the idea.
Yep.
Might do that one day. Cool. Right, so character number 1, sent in by Alex Hansen.
Hi.
Hello.
Alex Handsome.
Hey!
Hey.
This character is male.
But is it handsome? I mean,
Ati.
It is not Artie or 80.
at this point, it doesn't matter, so Breeze.
It is not Breeze.
Okay.
I'm gonna say Raoden.
It is not Raoden. Excellent. Clue number
Thinking
2.
that people would send in Elantris question. He's that Cosmere characters. So that'll sometimes happen, but not frequently.
Question number 2. Sorry, clue number 2. This character is immortal.
Hoid.
It is not Hoid.
Frost?
It is not Frost.
Raoden.
Taln.
It is not Palm.
I said Taln,
He did
as
say
in the
Taln.
Herald.
Okay,
Because
it is-
Palm is female.
Okay.
Sometimes.
That is a
He
real
did
good
say
point.
Taln.
He
I
did
heard
say
Taln.
Taln. It is not Taln either. You
Okay.
get 2 for that because I'm sleepy and my ears don't work. Cool. Clue number 3. This character is from Terrace.
Say that.
It is not Sazed.
Look, I've learned from last week. You just go with the obvious thing. Don't overthink it.
Rashek?
It is not Rashek.
Okay, good, because technically not immortal if you die.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Just.
What?
Oh.
I've just realized something. I have an addendum. If you guys
Okay.
to this one,
Yes.
But
To
we-
the swab.
to this character, I'll add it at the end.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, what's the...
I have a guess, but I need another clue so I can do my guess.
I don't remember the name. There is a character I'm thinking of, but I'll pass.
Okay. Clue number 4. This character is hematologically spiked.
Hadek, I think is his name.
Yeah.
Is Hardek? Yes.
That was going to be the next thing I
it's
thought of.
the
after
first
Stacey.
generation
Yeah.
guy.
Yeah,
Yep.
the leader of the first generation
Yeah.
of the Conjurer.
Oh.
Clue number 5 was before spiking. This character was not human.
Yes, they
That's-
were human. Oh wait, no,
Yeah.
that's technically.
Oh, they
'cause
were turned
technically
into misrays.
between.
Yeah.
No, they weren't they directly transformed into
No, they were all turned into
Misrates and
Misrates.
then like spiked while he was holding the power, but
Yeah.
there would theoretically be a point of time between being human and being spiked that they would be Misrates.
Yeah. And the addendum I would have then is the Conjurer's immortality has been thrown into question recently. So that clue number 2 was a bit...
I seem to recall that there was a thing in the annotations where they were directly converted into Khandra, and there was not a Miswraith phase.
I think it's like milliseconds that they were Misrates. It's not like, oh, they
Yeah,
were
well, that
Misrates
doesn't
for
even
2
matter
days.
then.
That's debatable. That is very
Let's do
debatable.
the next one.
Cool. Okay, character number 2. This character has some pretty great one-liners.
This is a great first clue. This
Yes.
is a different
Yeah.
flavor of a first clue.
This is-
I like it.
This is sent in by Gavin Morrison, by the way.
Thank you, Gavin, for
I'm
a
gonna
delightful
go with
first clue.
Hoid.
It is not Hoid.
Great one-liners.
Light Song?
It is not Light
That's
Song.
a good- all I can think of is Adolin. Look, he has some good one-liners in Oathbringer, okay?
It is
I
not
have to go to
Adolin.
someone that I trust with my life. My tailor. Yes. Like, that was amazing. That's what appeared in my mind, so.
Okay, clue number 2. This character has grown tremendously since we first saw them.
Shallan?
It is not Shallan.
She is that witty character.
She is. She's got those wits.
I'm gonna say Sazed.
It is not Sarzed.
Okay.
Does he have one-liners?
Well, it's like some of the epigraphs are one line, so
that
He
is
quite
not
literally
what
has
the-
one-liners.
Casual
Unfortunately, the hero of ages.
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, it was a good one-liner, but that does not really fit the spirit of what that clue 1 means, I don't
Yeah.
think. I would riot if that was the case.
Kelsier?
It is not Kelsier.
Ooh.
Did he really grow much?
Yeah, I mean,
So he was.
maybe he grew another body.
Yeah.
No, I think Secret History gives him depth, a lot of depth.
Okay, so clue number 3. This character can be considered both old and young.
Pattern.
It is not Pattern.
Oh, Syl.
Hey, yes, this character is Syl. I knew you were going to get it on that one. Yep.
Yeah.
Clue number 4 was this character enjoys a good prank, and clue number 5 is the father.
Yeah.
The character's father has their head in the clouds.
Hey.
I think all those clues were extremely clever.
They were very good.
I like that.
Good
I like it.
question.
Yes.
Take notes on that clue because on that character because that was a main character, but the clues were just like, oh, I had to think about
A
that.
little
I
bit
like
different. Yeah.
that. Yeah.
That was
Rather than
El-
Rosharin.
El Primo, who's that Cosmere character.
Primo.
Good job, Gavin.
You win the good Who's That Cosmere Character award for this month.
If Brandon,
I guess.
Which may be September or October.
I don't know.
if this Who's That Cosmic Character was a question and you'd asked it of Brandon, he would say, good question.
That's not a high bar.
He would also ruffle you.
That's right. Great. Well, we'll see you guys next week for more Words of Brandon from the Legion release. And so follow us on 17shard.com for all your news, discussion, fun, and theories that you need in your life about
And
Brandon Sanderson.
Send your Who's That Cosmic Characters to Who's That Cosmic Character at gmail.com.
Yep. You can discuss with us on our Discord, link below. And you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, SoundCloud, YouTube. You can give us a review on iTunes, and we'll see you guys next time.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Caw.